In this video, I'm going to show you how you can verify and perhaps modify, if necessary, this Sector 3 data in Excel. Probably a good idea to have seen my other two Sector 3 videos, in particular the step-by-step guide, which shows you how to get this data into Excel in the first place. So I'm going to show you how you can look at the data, very easily change it if it's necessary, to create an extremely powerful business segment analysis tool. Something which is really only possible with this new XBRL data. The Sector 3 sheet you download has 3 sheets in it. The last one has all of the data in. This is essentially the data that's been downloaded from our website. So why do we need to look at this raw data in the first place? Well, for aggregations and our comparisons to work, all the data needs to be there, otherwise we're going to be looking at misleading figures. So we need to check that and also make sure that it hasn't been double counted either. As I've said many times before, the great thing about Excel is it's got loads of inbuilt functions that enable you to manipulate and analyze data. So we're going to take advantage of those functions, and one of the things that we've done to make that possible is that we've organized the data that comes down basically as a series of records, and these are obviously all the field names up there. So we can always see the field names the whole time. What we can do is use the freeze panes function to make sure that we can always see the top row. So I'm just going to set that up there. Two columns that we want to pay particular attention to here are the code column and the standard data item column. Now the code column shows you all the classifications that you will have made to the various sectors when you were looking at the data on the website before downloading it. So this is important because this is the values that we want to work with. And what our software does is also classifies the tags according to standard data item XBRL tags, so that we can do those aggregations and comparisons. So let's go to the data ribbon so that we can start to mess around with this data. What we want to do is to reduce the number of records on view so that we can quickly see whether something is missing or indeed whether we might need to modify it. Now within Excel there is this fantastic feature called the filter, and if I click on that, every data field then gets a drop down which enables you to filter the data. So we can ensure, for example, that we just look at the 2012 figures. As you can see, it's really easy to apply these filters. I'm going to do that because I am very confident that if XBRL to Excel has brought down figures for 2012, it will have brought down figures for all the other years. So I just need to look at that one year whilst I'm trying to ascertain whether there's any problem. So I'm going to apply that filter, and as I mentioned before, the code column is very important. This is where we've classified the particular segments. In this case, it's aerospace, and all the aerospace segments have been classified using the NAIC code 3364. So again, what I'm going to do is just take those all off, then apply the one I want to see, which is the 3364, and then we'll be just looking at the aerospace data, and that's the stuff we want to manipulate. That's the stuff that we're really interested in. So that's all we need to see. So we can filter for that, and instead of looking at over 700 records, we're now looking at, where are we? Just down here. You probably can't quite see it because it's just under the view window. It keeps a record of the number of records that we're looking at, and so instead of looking at 700, we're now looking at 52, which is great. Right, now let's go to the top. You can see that all of this information is in company order, so we can basically look at one company after another just to make sure everything is in order. Now, the model that we have put in this particular sheet revolves around revenues, profit, and assets to build a few fairly straightforward ratios. So we need to make sure all that information is present, and we've classified all of the data items according to those particular data items, and so we've got revenues, assets, and for profits We've used quite a high level tag that we've classified everything to in order to make sure that we don't miss any profit figures. So it doesn't matter what the profit figure that the companies use, we can pick it up because we're using one at a much higher level. Unfortunately, it's got a rather ridiculous name: income loss from continuing operations before income taxes, extraordinary items, non-controlling interest. Basically, it's pre-tax profit, so that's what I'll refer to it, rather than the rather long-winded moniker which it has under the XBRL tags. So let's start making our way down the data to make sure it's all correct. So in the case of Boeing, we have the profit figures we're looking for, and revenues and assets, that's all present, which is great. Moving on to LMT, which is Lockheed. We've got assets, we've got, yes, our profits figures and our revenues. Moving down again further to General Dynamics, so GD, again, revenues, assets, and profits. Now you might be wondering, oh, why are there only 3 figures for General Dynamics, and there's like 6 for the others? That's because for each of Lockheed and Boeing, there were 2 segments. They had 2 segments, both of which we regarded to be aerospace. So that's the reason why there's double the number of values. So far so good. Let's move down to the last company, Honeywell, and we've got assets, revenues, that's great. And yes, where is the profits figure? So why might we not have any operating profit? Well, it could be that the data item hasn't sort of been downloaded, but we know how good XBRL to Excel is, so that couldn't possibly have happened. So there must be some other explanation. Now, it could be the most likely candidate is that it hasn't been given a standard data item. Now, that would apply to any data items, for example, which are extensions. So if we look down Honeywell, go down the extension column, or the schema column, we will see that there is one extension here. So this is a very likely candidate. Any data item which is an extension, therefore effectively been invented by the company, we do not currently classify with a particular standard item tag, so it just will have been ignored, unlike the US GAAP standard data items. So let's have a look and see what that is. Let's actually go to the proper description: segment reporting, segment profit loss. Bit of a nonsensical title, but we can see that it is profit loss, so that is very much looking like the data item that we want. So when we are happy with that, we're satisfied ourselves that's what we want to look at, we can go up and grab this tag and classify in exactly the same way that we have classified all the other operating profit segments. And so we now have a complete set of data to work with. Or do we? Because we have only fixed it for 2012, and obviously we need to fix it for the other years as well. So what we actually need to do is to remove the filters, and because our cursor is on the particular field that we just changed, we just need to arrow up and down, and that will take us to the ones we also need to change. So again, we can just copy and paste and put it in for 2010 and 2011. So now our data set is complete. I will mention also double counting. Shouldn't encounter it, because what we do before we download the data when we're processing all of this information is to make sure as we possibly can that only a single value comes down, that there aren't any totals in there that double count the same value. So you can be pretty confident that you won't see any double counted data in your analysis. So let's move on to the analytics, and if we go to the sectors tab, we can start to fill these pivot tables. So before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the year here, because we're doing some sales growths, so we need to have figures for 2011 as well. So once that's set correctly, all we need to do then is to refresh all our pivot tables with one click there, and then we will see information for the sector we're interested in, aerospace. and we can quickly see we've got a ratio of almost 15% sales growth, profit margin healthy for the sector of 11%, and a return on assets of just over 16%. And if we want to break that down further to see each company's individual contribution to that, we can go to the companies tab, and we can look at it again for aerospace. So if we highlight those, we can see that the biggest sales growth has come from Boeing, and the slowest sales growth has come from Lockheed. Then looking at the profit margins, we can see that Honeywell has a whopping great 19% margin, very healthy indeed. And then looking at return on assets, we can see that the leader there is Lockheed with almost 28%. So even though they have the slowest sales growth, they have the most impressive return on assets. So that's the kind of thing you can do with this XBRL segment data. This is only possible because of the fact that this information is now disclosed in XBRL, and so yeah, without that you wouldn't be able to do this kind of sophisticated analysis which you see here.